career power. And I want to talk to you this week about emotion regulation and mindfulness. So those of you that know me will know that I'm a fairly passionate advocate for mindfulness as a practice, both formally and informally. And what you may not know is that for me, getting involved with learning about and developing the art of mindfulness was an absolute career game changer. So it game changed my composure, my executive presence, my leadership capability, my personal performance and effectiveness. And it all started with my leaning into a daily meditation practice, but not just any meditation practice. You know, it wasn't about visualizing myself floating in clouds or on a beach or whatever. It was very specifically a mindfulness practice. Now, that's not necessarily for everyone, although I would really advocate for it if you are under any kind of professional pressure, dealing with any kind of stress, or have aspirations to be really highly personally effective. A daily mindfulness practice of as little as 5 to 10 minutes is life-changing. However, what I want to talk to you about is more informal mindfulness-based practices that can support you to be at your best more of the time professionally. And this is something that I've conducted research into. So there are very measurable effects of simple mindfulness practices on pro-social behaviour, so our ability to relate effectively to others. And that's on top of the reams of research that demonstrate that mindfulness practices support cognitive activity, so being smarter, making smarter decisions, juggling competing priorities effectively. It supports our ability to focus with attention on tasks, complex tasks, and make less mistakes, on our reactivity times, on our overall health and well-being. So lots and lots of benefits. But I'm not here to go on about the benefits of mindfulness to you today, although I could for hours. What I want to share with you today are a handful of simple mindfulness-based tools you can use when you are in the thick of a moment of pressure, or you get triggered emotionally at work, or something happens that could throw you. And the reason I think this is important is because I believe that your ability to regulate your emotional responses is one of the single most important attributes of the successful, high-performing leader that there is. Because when we lose our shit professionally, whether that's shout at someone or show our anger in an unregulated way, or cry or get really emotional, we look weak, right? And by the way, I'm not suggesting that there is no place for emotion and humanity in the workplace. Far from it. But if you've ever ended up in tears in the office, you know how rotten you feel about it, how vulnerable and exposed and challenging that can be. So I offer these tools as ways of maintaining that balance and composure in moments when what we want to do is react against someone, defend ourselves, get upset, even when we feel exposed and a blush comes up, and then we feel really aware that we're blushing, and that creates a cascade of blushing. If you've ever had that one, I've had that one. And use these tools to help mitigate those feelings. So the tools are body and breath, essentially, as ways back to ourselves, back to center, and to create a little bit of space around whatever is taking place that's putting us under pressure. And I want to be really clear, there is a difference between using these tools to regulate our emotions and repressing emotions. Repressing frustration, anger, hurt, sadness is highly detrimental and not a healthy strategy for us to use to manage ourselves professionally. Whereas regulating our emotions, which involves allowing that emotion to come up, looking at it experiencing it, or acknowledging the emotion and then getting ourselves to a safe space so that we can experience it. That's what I mean by emotion regulation. So what does that look like? In a moment when you feel an unhelpful emotion bubbling up, or you're in a situation where you know you are at risk of an unhelpful emotion bubbling up, there are a couple of different tools you can use. The first I want to offer you is to get into your hands. So picture the scene. You're in a meeting, it's high pressure, someone's asked you a question and you feel vulnerable or exposed or stumped, or someone has said something that's left you feeling an emotional reaction of anger or frustration or hurt, or you've been kind of knocked off center by something. My invitation to you in that moment is to, very discreetly, no movement required, connect to your hands. And you can try this now. Notice the very subtle difference in temperature between your hand and the feeling of the air above your hand, where it meets the palm of your hand. See if you can feel the slight tingling sensation that is actually your blood moving through the palm of your hand, and the very presence of the nerve endings, the multiple nerve endings that are there in the palm of your hand. You can do all of this while sitting exactly as you were sitting. If you're in a Zoom meeting, no one can even see your hands, but if you're in a physical meeting, your hands can be resting in your lap, they can be sitting on the table in front of you, holding a pen. You can still do this, and that's the beauty of it. In that moment, you use the feelings, the sensations in your hands as an access point back to your body. And in doing so, you can watch the physical feeling of the emotion coming up. You can watch it as it subsides, which it will do. Emotions rise and they fall. And by just giving yourself that distraction, that different body focus, it takes the punch out of the moment. It gives you a moment of control. It connects you to your physical self, your physical felt sense. And it's a small thing, but it makes all the difference. I've used this with numerous clients to great effect. It just enables us to create a space between ourselves and whatever this thing is that's happening around us, this trigger that's leaving us feeling het up. Get into your hands. Notice what's happening in your hands, in the rest of your body, and allow yourself that little bit of space. Mindfulness is a lot to do with becoming the observer. So noticing what's coming up as it's coming up. And to do that, you need to be connected to your body, and your hands is a nice, simple, accessible way to get connected to your body. They're very sensitive. You can feel the temperature and the tingle and the air around your hands. I used this technique a lot back in the day in big board meetings when inevitably high pressure, sometimes frustrating conversations were taking place. I used it not so much to moderate myself when something was said that I felt reactive against, but to help me maintain my temperance and composure so that I didn't jump in with a response to something without thinking it through carefully first. I would stay connected to my hands as a kind of anchor to groundedness as the conversations were happening around me. And even as I was participating in those conversations, I would work hard at being in my hands as well. I would also use this technique when arguing with my husband as a way of staying grounded, maintaining my calm and cool, and not getting reactive and defensive in the heat of the heated discussion that might be taking place. So give it a go. Next time you're in a kind of tense situation, perhaps a tense discussion, try connecting to your hands. The second tool, this one will be more familiar, but it's still something many of us forget to do, is breath. We generally breathe shallow. Most of us breathe shallow in the day-to-day. And look, chronic stress is everywhere in professional life. It's extremely prevalent, and it's typically associated with shallow breathing. We're using the top part of our lungs. And what that does is tell our nervous system that we are in fight or flight. It brings us into our sympathetic nervous system. That's the stressy bit of our nervous system, right? So shallow breathing doesn't help with that. The simple act of taking 4 to 5 deeper breaths where we deliberately breathe down, use belly if you like. It's not actually technically belly breathing, but breathing down using the fuller part of our lungs and breathing down into our diaphragm, into our belly. So deliberately slowing and deepening our breath. I mean, the way I did it just then was a bit exaggerated, right? It would be noticed. You don't have to, you can do this in a very subtle way. If you just for a moment come to your breath as a focus point, breathe more slowly, breathe more deeply. It has a couple of different effects. When we slow our breathing, we signal to our nervous system that we are in the rest digest space. So we move into a more calm state. When we deepen our breathing, we hit receptors in our body that also communicate that we are safe, that we can rest digest rather than fight or fly. And, you know, if you think about it, it makes sense. If you step out into a busy road and realize a car's coming, you gasp. Short, sharp, shallow, right? Whereas when you feel deeply relaxed and restful, heading towards sleep, you're in a much deeper, slower pattern of breathing. So rather than letting the breath be at the effect of a different cause, we can cause a different effect by intentionally controlling our breathing. And look, I'm a trained breathwork practitioner, and breath is incredibly powerful for moving our energy into the space we need it. So if the space you need it is calm, composed, and at the reins of your own emotions, then deepening and slowing your breath will create space for you. It will create a sense of calm. It will down-regulate your nervous system, and that enables you to think far more clearly. When we're in fight, flight, stress response, our prefrontal cortex, the thinking part of our brain, is not able to function as effectively. The more animal, reactive, emotional part of our brain, our limbic system, is what is at the reins when we are feeling very het up and stressed. And the problem with chronic stress is we're always a bit up, so we're never thinking quite as clearly. So breath. I've talked about hands, and now I'm talking about breath. The simple act of 4 to 5 intentional breaths. Slower, deeper, and ideally through your nose rather than your mouth. Because again, you then trigger slightly different receptors that help down-regulate the nervous system, i.e. bring you into a more relaxed, composed state, which is a better state generally to be doing business in. It's a better state to be in professionally because you want your maximum prefrontal capacity. You want your best judgment, your best thinking, your best ability to deal with complex situations. And the more at the reins of yourself that you are, the more effective you can be personally. Imagine being able to choose your response to any given situation rather than being in an automatic reaction to a situation that may or may not be the reaction that's going to serve you and the situation best. So I offer you those 2 tips today. Be in your hands and 4 to 5 slow, deep nose breaths as ways of being in your best, most regulated energy. If you would like more like that, I'll be leading my next masterclass, my next open masterclass on Wednesday, the 14th of September at 12:30. I'm just looking at my calendar there to remind myself of the date and time. I will drop a link to that masterclass in the comments below this video. I specialise in helping people be in their most personally effective, powerful and composed space within their careers, and I'm going to be sharing some of my best tools for the mindset, skill set and strategies that are going to serve you best within your career, and to have the career you want, full of fulfillment and alignment and success on your own terms. So that is coming down the line next Wednesday, the 14th, and I'll drop a link in the comments below. I hope you have enjoyed this week's Career Power Tuesday tips. I've been Dr. Victoria Stakeland, and I'll see you again around this time.